What a beautiful Sunday here at Grace Presbyterian Church. I just want to welcome you. My name is Pastor John Denton, and I'm the pastor here at Grace. If this is your first time here, welcome. If this is your 1,000th time here, welcome, Nancy. It's great to see you today. Yes, praise God. If you're viewing on the live stream, we invite you to come into worship every Sunday, but we're also really excited that you're with us on the live stream. So however you're tuning into worship today, I know that it's going to be a blessing in your life. I do, before we bring Wayne up here, hey Wayne, I want to tip my hat to session. Yesterday we had 11 elders here for 4 hours for a session retreat, and it was a great time of learning. We had an executive coach from Aspire Coaching, Randy Free, who came and did an amazing session retreat with us. So thank you to our session. They are leading forward. They are leading us out of this time of great reset and into a time of new life here at Grace. And for that, I am thankful. So thank you, session. Wayne?
Thank you,
and thank you, Wayne. Lots of thank yous today.
A lot of thank yous.
Yeah, today. Wow.
Good morning. Good morning. And good morning, choir. And Roberta, thank you for filling in for Francis today. Nice to have you here as well. Also, I'd like to welcome Jeff Parker here today. Nice to have you here, Jeff. And his good father, Larry, here this morning as well. It's good to see you too, Larry. And my good friend, I've known for many, many years, Nancy's always great to see you, Nancy. She's the founder of our church way, way back. I won't say how back, far back, but way back. It's always nice to see you, Nancy. We're excited this morning, too, to welcome Maggie Harmon, who will be speaking to us later on today. She's from Presbyterian. She has some great information for us. The Valentine brunch, I went over there and snuck over there this morning. It's beautiful, and we're going to have some great food. I know Ed and Peggy have been working hard on all the food they prepare for that as well. So we look forward to, after the fellowship hall, to join in love and fellowship today. Susan Hilbrand is starting a new class on John, and if you would like to come to that class, it's on Thursdays at 10 o'clock. If you'd like to join her, you can call her on the number that you'll see on the screen, or you just come out and show up. It's in room 8, so she'd love to have you. The flowers today, as you see, are beautiful, and if you are interested in signing up on the flower calendars in the back of the narthex, what's really important is if you do want to sign up for the flower, what is it for? What colors do you like? And that would help them a lot. It would help Susie Long. We always want to thank Susie Long. She does a wonderful job on the flowers as well. Prayer is concerned. I was talking to my nice ladies here in the front. The Barbara Gomer is coming along, not as fast as they like to have her coming along, but she's coming along and moving more and more. But we keep asking prayers for Barbara. She's a wonderful lady. She wants to get out of it and get home, so keep her in your prayers as well. We went, Tom Harris is biting at the bit. I did hear, though, that he came down with COVID. So he's got to fight that now, and I don't know if he's, Will, if you heard any more information on when he's going to get out of there, but it won't be for a while, I don't think, Will, so he gets over that. So 5 more weeks, so he wants to get out of there so bad. Just a little tip of information I'd like to kind of share with you. You know, I love nature, and I read the other day our butterflies, the monarch butterfly. Back in 2020, they were really getting really low in population. You know, they migrate from Mexico into California. They love the beaches here and all that. No, just kidding there. But I just read, though, they're up to 380,000 strong now. So the monarchs are back again. So praise God on that. And, and other than that, God bless you all, and we'll see you after the service. Thank you.
Good morning, church family. Good morning. Let everything we do praise the Lord. Please stand if you are able and join us now in our responsive worship. Teach me, O Lord, the way of your strategies, and I will observe it to the end.
We don't have what you have.
It's the wrong call to worship. So, give me understanding that I may keep your law and observe it with a whole heart. This is last week's. We can just do this one. We'll do it together. That's last week's. That was last week's on accident. Yeah, we'll do it together. Will and I will lead it.
Oh, we got on the screen?
So that one's last week's. Yeah. So Will and I will lead this week's together. So the one we have in our bulletin and on the screen is last week's. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So, but Phil and I will lead this one together.
Yay!
So we'll start over. You know.
Let everything we do praise the Lord. Please stand if you are able and join me now in our responsive call to worship.
We're good.
Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I will observe it to the end.
Give me understanding that I may keep your law and observe it with my whole heart.
Turn my eyes from looking at vanities. Give me life in your ways.
See, I have longed for your precepts. In your righteousness, give me life. Let us worship God.
Pray with me now. Oh God, you confirm us in your promise. With the coming of Christ, you have implanted your word within us, sealing the covenant once and for all. We gather to give you all praise and thanksgiving. Impart to us the fullness of your truth. Lead us along the paths of righteousness in your name, in the name of Jesus, the Word made flesh, whom with you we adore. Thanks be to God.
Amen.
Please remain standing for this next song, 10,000 Reasons. You ready to worship the living God? Bless him. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name.
The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me.
Let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your heart is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship his holy
Amen. At this point in the service, I want to invite you to turn to one another and greet them with the love and peace of Christ. I will have one housekeeping thing. When the music plays, we are going to sit down and stop greeting one another. So may the peace of Christ be with you. right, kids. Today we have a lot going on in worship. So we're going to dismiss you all straight to Sunday school today. I know everyone's going to miss the prayer song and the children's message because we often learn a little bit more in the children's message than the sermon, I know. But all right, kids, let's go to Sunday school. Come on. All right, I'm back. If you would pull out your Pew Bible today. I know we have a abbreviated worship order today because we do have a full day. You have to get home to watch the Super Bowl. But before that, we have a special presentation from the Presbyterian Foundation. And then we have an awesome Valentine's brunch. So it is going to be a great day. If you would pull out your Bible you brought with you, your iPhone app, your Pew Bible that you already brought out, and turn to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 21 through 37. Hear now the word of the Lord. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, "You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment." But I say to you that if you're angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say "you fool," you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're on the way to court with him. Or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you'll be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid every last penny. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than that comes from evil. The word of the Lord. Pray with me now. Lord, each one of us enters into this room from a different place, Lord. Some of us look forward to being here all week long, and others were nervous about stepping in, and others were excited about a big game, and some didn't even come because of that same game, Lord. But whatever place we come into the sanctuary or online, Lord, we are now all equals before you. We are now all in the same place, in the same setting, Lord. We ask you to clear our minds, to clear our concerns, to clear whatever lens we walked into this place with, Lord, and help us to have a new perspective, a new look at your word through what we hear today. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Today, two teams will go up against each other and battle it out on the field. At the end of the game, Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes will have been successful in leading their team to victory. And so Patrick Mahomes led my fantasy football team to a second place. So, I mean, hey, anything's possible. I can tell you that. Yeah, anything's possible. There you go. But in 57 years of Super Bowls, there has always been a winning team and a losing team. I think this is really the best case scenario, right? Having a winner and having a loser. So speaking of winning and losers, I want to know who's rooting for the Chiefs. Any Chiefs fans? Oh, wow, okay. All right, who's rooting for the Eagles? And we have lots of non-football fans. All right. We have people trying to get in the church, Will. I always see the back door, so I can tell you when people are here. So some of us root for the Chiefs, some of us root for the Eagles, but at the end of the day, we know where the dividing lines are. You all raised your hand, you saw kind of who was rooting for who. But in the sanctuary on Super Bowl Sunday, for the most part, those dividing lines are friendly. But sadly enough, I think that we live in this culture that's not always friendly. A culture that's divided, and we have these clear lines drawn, and we simply don't mix. People draw lines in the sand and insist that their way is right or their thought is right. Or if you don't do this, you're wrong. I think this polarization finds its way into our families, into our workplaces, into our schools, and even into our churches. Nowhere seems to be out of this touch of judgment. But this division eventually erodes everything, right? This division eventually takes over and destroys all things. From the beginning of time, it's destroyed civilizations. From the beginning of time, it's destroyed relationships and fractured families. It keeps going and going and going until everything is gone. Families divided, churches broken, a society going into a direction that doesn't even reflect what we would hope for any society to look like. But this is the world that Jesus enters into. Jesus understands that this fighting leads to nothing but devastation and destruction. Jesus enters into this time where Israel's waiting for their day in court, waiting for Jesus to come and bring justice against their enemies. But instead, as we've learned, Jesus walks up to this mountaintop and starts to speak. So if you pull out your sermon card today, there's 2 points. Yep, it's a good one today, 2 points, short and sweet. But those 2 points are about when we say yes to Jesus, that justice looks different. So we have these 2 ways justice looks different when we say yes to Jesus. The first point of your sermon notes is that justice looks different because Jesus calls us to be reconciled. Jesus calls us to be reconciled. You've heard that was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you're angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to your own judgment. Don't come to the altar with that anger, but leave it and go be reconciled to your brother and sister. Jesus gets up on this mountaintop and says, hey, let's not start a war. Let's not take sides. Let's not make enemies. Let's be reconciled. Let's make friends. For some of you, you're probably a little uneasy right now because that's not how we live our life. That's not how we want it to be. We hear the message on Sunday morning, and then Monday through Saturday, we want life to be like the TV show Yellowstone, where we just go out there and solve it pretty quick. But I can tell you, if you've ever watched Yellowstone, it rarely works out for anyone. And if you haven't seen season 5 yet, I'm sorry, but it's just, yeah. Yeah, spoiler alert. Sorry, Karen. But isn't that what we wanted, though? Swift justice. We want it solved right there in the town with a pistol. But when you go to church, when you walk into this place and you're holding something against anyone, against someone else, against your brother or sister, take a step back. Go to that person and make things right. And then and only then, Jesus says, are we ready to enter this place? Doesn't this justice look different? Isn't this not how we imagined it? I feel like we're more like the Israelites, waiting for Jesus to come to bring it and to take on our enemies. And instead, Jesus says, let's be reconciled. Now, some of you might be hearing this message and think, why would I ever do that? Why would I ever reconcile to anyone else? This message is costly, isn't it? It requires you to lower yourself, to humble yourself. It requires you to forgive others as you have been forgiven. It requires you to go against the grain of culture, doesn't it? I mean, I listened to talk radio this week, and not a single person on talk radio, not a single person on the news loop said, be reconciled. That was not a message of the week. And then we walk into church, and we hear, be reconciled? What? What is this? So the second point in your sermon notes is, justice looks different because Jesus calls us to avoid court. Now, I've been advised to tell you this is not legal advice. So don't say, well, my pastor told me to avoid court, and now I'm losing everything. So this is not legal advice. This is pastoral advice from the pulpit. So Jesus calls us to avoid court. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're on the way to court with him. Or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge will hand you over to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you'll never get out until you've paid every last penny. The culture that's built around this idea that the courtroom will solve all things. What is justice without the courtroom? But here again, Jesus is pushing on our cultural norm. Not just our cultural norms, but the cultural norms of the time. Who wouldn't want a day in court against their enemies? Who wouldn't look forward to that time? And I know we say it throughout the week, right? Oh, I can't wait till that person gets theirs. I can't wait until they have to come before the judge. But Jesus says, work out your differences. Save the time. Save the energy. You don't win or lose in court if you don't go to court at all, right? But I think so often, like the Israelites, we long for that day in court. We can't wait to get even. We can't wait to settle the score. But Jesus' promise, the promise in Jesus is that the verdict is already in, isn't it? The verdict is already in. No need for the courtroom. Let's be reconciled to one another as Jesus reconciles us to God. Jesus finishes the passage by saying, let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one. Friends, I think it's important to look at Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, this text we're reading today, and understand that this is not a mere suggestion. Jesus was not telling the Israelites, hey, you might want to think about this. Jesus is saying, hey, your culture will be ruined. You will eventually destroy yourselves if you keep on this path. We need to be reconciled. Jesus is saying, speak the truth. Jesus is saying, this is the way of living. This way of living is how we bring about God's kingdom. That this is the kind of breakthrough that is happening now that he reigns. Friends, God loves us so much that he sent Jesus down to this very world, this exact world we're living in today, to save us. Without Jesus, this world is completely lost. Without reconciliation, we fight each other into the grave. No one wins. No one is victorious. There is only one true victory, and that victory comes through the reconciliation that is through Jesus Christ. This is not a suggestion. This is the way Jesus calls us to live our lives. When we say yes to Jesus, justice looks different. Amen. I'm back. We are a people who are richly blessed. We have a creator who has filled us with life and with purpose. We have a redeemer who walks with us. We have a sustainer in the Holy Spirit who fills us with resurrection power. In grateful response, I invite you to leave your tithes and offerings in the offering basket as you leave, or to make those online on PayPal for our online viewers. Hi, Maisie. Just in time. Will you now bow your heads in prayer with me? And today we are going to have our offertory prayer and prayer of dedication, or our prayer of dedication and our pastoral prayer together. So we'll conclude our prayer with the Lord's Prayer. Pray with me now. O God, through your grace, the foundations of faith have been laid. Christ, the cornerstone, has once and for all been set in place, and you have called us to building in whom the Spirit dwells. Each of us is a builder. Each of us is a builder too. In the day of Christ, our work will be revealed. Accept what we do and the gifts that we bring. May they fit your design and prove enduring. Truly, you are the rock of our salvation. You are the source of strength that lifts us from the depths of our own cares and concerns. We give thanks that you set our feet upon solid ground, and you give us courage to face the day. The mountains you have raised are a sign of your majesty. Spring waters flow to surge our thirst. Highways spread before us as we seek to follow your way. The cities teem with people who have called us to serve you. We remember that you have sent Christ as a seal of your promise. He went about healing and teaching in response to your will. When questioned by brothers and sisters, he relied upon you as a source of his power. Beset with doubt and fears, he was not afraid to call out your name. He withdrew from the crowds to find direction through prayer. We give you thanks that when tempted, he withstood his accuser, teaching his followers to be confident and endure. O Lord, on this day, we specifically pray for those affected by the devastating earthquake in Turkey and in Syria. Give the first responders the support they need. Let food and aid flow in as swiftly as possible. Surround those who have lost loved ones with your love. You are indeed a God of compassion. We confess again our trust in you, Lord. Renew us by your testimony of enduring and diligence, and empower us through your continuing charity. With the host of those who have gone before us, may we go forth from this place singing your praise. We proclaim to those about your word and that you're the rock of salvation. Let us now pray the prayer that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I now want to invite up Patrick Ryan. Patrick is going to introduce our presentation from the Presbyterian Foundation.
Good afternoon, church. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you Maggie Harmon. She is with the Presbyterian Foundation. She supports the congregations of PCUSA in the Western region. She supports their fundraising, their legacy giving, and we're just so blessed to have her. Maggie, by trade, is an estate planning attorney, and she's going to share with us today some strategies to assist you in planning your estates that Grace Presbyterian Church may benefit from that process. I want you to think of this. We have a legacy fund. Currently, our legacy fund is close to $800,000. Most of that has been gifted through estates of people that have passed away. It is our goal to endow our pastor eventually. $3 million in our legacy fund will endow the salary of our pastor in perpetuity. That's what we're trying to aim for. If the pastor's salary is endowed, that gives us the opportunity of building outreach programs and using those resources to build Grace Presbyterian Church. So think about that. $3 million, we're on track to do that. We have $800,000 right now, and that's totally doable. So as Maggie speaks and talks about planning opportunities and just really building the kingdom of Christ, his rule and his reign here on earth, think about the part that you can play and helping that in perpetuity. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Maggie Harmon.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. There's probably not a good place for me to put my coffee. So I'll just hold it, which is good because I'm a fidgeter anyway. No, it's okay. And without a clicker, I don't have anything to hold, so this will be good for me. We're in the midst of worship. This is sacred work, and oftentimes I will say I feel like we go from the sacred to the profane as we're talking about money and our resources. But the truth is it's all sacred. Everything that we're doing with the gifts that we've been given is sacred work. And so I'm going to talk about some technical things. I'm going to try to talk fairly quickly, but I will be here afterwards, and I have a lot of handouts that you can take with you. But what I want to think about as we're talking about some of the technical things is that we have to do the technical work of living and giving even as we're doing this sacred work of responding to God's call. So, and I'll just flag when I'm ready for the next slide. Very briefly, the Presbyterian Foundation is one of the 6 administrative agencies of PCUSA. We have been around, I think we can go to the next slide. We've been around for 220, let me do my math right, 224 years. Our oldest endowment fund that we manage is 202 years old now. It was established in 1821, that's right. I lost a few years there for a while. The work of the foundation has largely been about managing endowments, managing assets, financial assets of the church, and that looks today like about $3 billion of assets that we manage for congregations, for individuals, and all of that ends up going back into some way supporting ministry. So again, it's that play of the tactical work we're doing with the gifts that we've been received and the impact that can have. And it's part of what allows me to be here with all of you and serving the 500 or so churches that I serve across the Southwest is being able to be supported by those gifts and those resources and the work that we're doing together. So this, just very briefly to orient us to the sacred work that we're talking about doing from Psalm 103. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all God's benefits. As for mortals, their days are like grass. They flourish like a flower of the field, for the wind passes over it, and it's gone, and its place knows it no more. But the steadfast love of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who are in awe of God, and God's righteousness to children's children, to those who keep the covenant and remember to do God's commandments. In Hebrew, everlasting is lador vador. It can also be translated in some places as from generation to generation. It is the connective tissue of how we are recipients of the gifts that have come from those who came before us and the gifts that we're going to give to those who come after us. That's why I find this language so important as we think about where we are in that chain. Go to the next slide. I want to think very briefly and offer you two observations of what stewardship is. What I think is, and I'm not going to read to you every slide, but what I think is important in these two definitions, if we think about stewardship, is in the first definition, that language of something considered worth caring for, and in the second definition, something that's been entrusted to our care. So this requires us, as we think about our role as stewards, to think about what is it that I value, what do I personally value, and what is it that I have been given, and how do I feel about that thing that I have been given. So in some ways, it's an attitude of generosity, it's an attitude of thinking about understanding and gratitude of what have I been given, and am I properly valuing it? Am I caring for it in the way in which it was given to me? So just something to think about as we think about our role as stewards and how we interact with the things that we have. We can go to the next slide. I'm not going to read this whole slide to you. I think that most of you are probably familiar with Matthew 6, and I don't have my glasses on, so I think it says 19 through 24. I should probably know that. What I think is important in this, and again, I'm sure that a lot of you have heard it in stewardship sermons or stewardship preaching, is for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, right? And then we usually jump to the very end, which is you cannot serve both God and money. And I've heard this preached a number of times where it's sort of an indictment of money, right? You know, we say you cannot serve both God and money, and your heart's supposed to be in one place with God. And then usually the person who's preaching it says, and by the way, please give generously. And I think, well, who's going to now raise their hand and say, I have money when you just told me that might not be a good thing? I actually think that this is a little bit different. I don't think that this is actually about money being bad and only God being good, because money is just a resource. It's just a thing that we do. What I think that this is really trying to tell us is that we're not very good at multitasking. You can go to the next slide. Our brains are not good at switching from one thing to another, and we get really distracted. So if our focus is on using our resources in a way that's reflective of God and that's reflective of our values, well, that's putting our treasure where our heart is and putting our heart where our treasure is. But if we're really focused on just the thing, just the object, just the money, well, then we're not thinking about how it can be a reflection of what's important to us. This morning, before I came over, I was doing some meditation, some journaling, and I was thinking about my children and the values that are important to me, and if I see those in my children. And they're both very different. I have a daughter who's 25 and a son who's 22, and they're doing different things. But I thought about those values, and then I thought about what they're doing, and they're both reflecting those values that my husband and I taught them. They're just doing it in different ways. And I think that that's ultimately what we want our gifts to be able to do, is to reflect God and our values in the ways that are true to us. And that's really about what leaving our legacy is. It's a memory of who we were and what was important to us. We can go to the next. So why is it that we do this work of being stewards? Why is it? Well, we heard from the pastor earlier, say yes, yes, or no, no. Respond to God. Be reconciled to what it is that God wants you to do. Why do we act as stewards? Well, because God tells us that that's part of what we're supposed to do. We are commanded to do that as being the people of God. how do we act as stewards? We do it in a lot of different ways. And ideally, we do it by doing all of these things at different points in our lives and in different ways that are true for us. We give our time, we give our talent, we give our treasure, we give our testimony. I've added that from a gentleman who I took a class with and I thought was absolutely brilliant. And then he said, at any point in your life, you should be activating 2 of these. Oftentimes, it's easy for us to do one. We can say, well, I'm giving a lot of my time right now, or I have a special gift and I'm offering that gift right now, or I'm too busy so I can give some money right now. But what he suggested, and I think that this is very true, is that part of stretching and being the person that God is calling us to be is doing a little bit more and maybe pushing ourselves in a direction where we didn't think we could go. So that's the challenge of, can you do 2 of these things at any point in your life, knowing that that will change as your life goes on? So right now, if I travel a lot for work, which I do, it's easy for me to say, well, I can just write a check to the church, and that's my stewardship right now. It's a little bit more of a stretch for me to say, and I will also do this activity, because that means that I'm giving up some of my personal time to do something more for my community. That's important, and it's important to challenge ourselves in thinking about that. I love this quote from James because he reminds us that it's very good to believe, and it's very important to do as well. To not just say it, but to take the actions that reflect what it is that we believe. We can go to the next slide. So when do we do stewardship? When does that happen? You're doing it right now. You're here listening. I appreciate that most of you didn't get up and walk away. I also appreciate that the structure of the liturgy today was you don't get the benediction until you listen to this. So sometimes we have to do those things, right? So you're doing stewardship right now. You're present. You're present to worship. You're present to hearing God's call. We're doing stewardship for tomorrow. You're thinking about what the church needs and how you're going to show up in the world. That's very present right now, today, tomorrow. Legacy giving is about forever. It's about how are we going to do stewardship when we are not physically here anymore? What are we doing to plant for the future? The image on this slide is of a carob tree, and carob trees, I'm told, take 35, and this is a big range, right? 35 to 70 years to come to full maturity. So I guess if you're a carob farmer, you really want those fast-growing trees. But I want to tell you a story about a carob tree. There was, and when I tell this story, I always imagine the character of the young boy in it as being maybe 14 or 15, because when my son was that age, he had kind of a smart mouth. I don't know if any of you have experienced that kind of thing with a 15-year-old boy. So a young boy is walking down the street, and he sees an old man planting a carob tree in the front yard of a house. And he looks at him and says, "Old man, why are you planting that tree? You're going to be dead before it ever grows and produces any fruit." And the old man sort of slowly stretches himself up and stands and looks at the boy and looks across the street. And he points to a house across the street with a mature carob tree. And he says, "On the day that I was born, my grandfather planted that tree for me. This is my son's house. Today, my grandson was born." That's what legacy giving is about. It's not about what we're going to get right now. It's not about something that we're even ever going to see. It's about recognizing that we've received gifts from people who we don't know who did something for us, and that we have an obligation to think about the people in our generations who we don't yet know, but we want to give to them some of the gifts that we've received. Go to the next slide. So how do we do that? How do we make legacy gifts? How do we make gifts right now? I want to offer you a few ideas to think about, and again, I'll be here after and can offer you some some material that might help in thinking about this. But sometimes we don't think about all of the gifts we have and all of the things that we can do, how we can actually make these gifts happen. Cash and bequests are very easy to do. A bequest is just a line in your trust or your will that says, I'm going to give this amount of money to this organization or to this thing. That's a bequest. But you can also think about, when you're thinking about your estate plan and how it is you want to give gifts, using pieces of real estate, using personal property. Sometimes we have objects that family may not want or may not value the same way we do, but we understand that something else will, and it can be valuable in another way. Securities, that's stocks, publicly traded securities, privately traded securities, bonds. You know, these are all things that make up the larger estate plan, and as we're thinking about how we give different pieces to the things that are important to us, we can use different things in different ways. Thinking about our retirement plans, life insurance, sometimes we have a collection. Retirement plans right now are particularly interesting because the tax law changes last year sped up the time in which a inheritor of a retirement plan has to spend it down. So, and this is very technical, but it's interesting. As you think about your whole estate plan, you want to think about what are the best ways to get the gifts to the church, to other organizations, to family, and to, I think, to stretch those dollars to be most effective. So right now with retirement plans, inherited IRAs, the people who are inheriting them will have 10 years to spend them down. So if someone inherits that while they're still working, they could end up paying a significant amount of tax on that money that they're receiving. If you give a retirement plan to the church, it will not pay any tax on it. So whatever that percentage is of tax all of a sudden stretches a little bit further and has a little bit bigger impact. So when you think about, you know, I have 100% of my estate and I'm going to give 10% of it to the church, then what is the best way to give that 10%? Right now, thinking about an IRA as a gift like that can be very valuable. We can go to the next slide. So I'm going to go through these things very quickly. I have lots of, we like paper at the foundation, so I have lots of paper that you can take with you that explains this, and I'm happy to explain it more as well. But I want to touch on these so that you know at least what they are and maybe be able to ask questions if something seems interesting. The first one, charitable trust, charitable remainder trust, charitable lead trust. These are trusts that work in a way where they sound exactly like what they do. Charitable remainder means that you set up a trust. For a period of time, it will pay out a certain amount of money to you or to the person that you name. And at the end of that period of time, the remainder goes to a charitable beneficiary. A charitable lead trust works the opposite way. So what you can do is give a charitable organization money for a specific amount of money every year for a specific number of years, and at the end of that period of time, the assets of the trust will revert to you or to an individual you name. That can be a really valuable tool if you want to give money to a grandchild and maybe they're not quite at an age where you feel like this would be a good time for them to get it. I'll use my son as an example again. At 22, he's very responsible. He's in the military. And also, like, I'm not sure I would give him a huge amount of money, but maybe in 10 years I would. So a charitable lead trust is a great way to defer when you're going to give that money to someone, maybe allow them to get a little bit more sophisticated in how they manage money and still get a gift to charity that's important to you. Direct bequests I mentioned before. I'm going to skip to a pooled income fund. Pooled income fund is a little bit like a gift annuity. So what you do is you buy into the fund. It pays out at a specific rate every year. And at the end of lifetime or a second lifetime, because it can be a joint lifetime tool, the remainder value of the gift that you had made goes to a charitable organization that you've named. So those are, again, nice lifetime gifts. We talked a little bit, or you heard a little bit about the endowment that the church has right now. An endowment is a permanent fund. It's a permanent source of income that will never go away. And as I said, our oldest endowment fund at the foundation is over 200 years old, 202 years old at this point. It still produces money for Bibles and for education for pastors. It's a pretty incredible gift to be able to create an endowment that promises that there will always be resources for the future. Very briefly, a donor-advised fund is a charitable fund that you start now. You get a charitable tax deduction for doing it, and you do not have to give away all the money right away that goes into the fund. You can give it away over time. You can continue to add to the fund, but it's basically like a charitable checking account. You get the full value of the gift that you make to it. You get to deduct that in the year that you make that gift or at the time that you make that gift, and then you can make advisory recommendations for where the money from that fund goes to. This is very convenient if you give to, I would say, more than 5 charities every year and you itemize your taxes, because then you only have one receipt that you have to remember. You only have one receipt you have to think about, but you can still give to a lot of different places. So a really convenient tool for that. And finally, I just want to touch on retirement plans. I talked a little bit about inheriting IRAs, but want to remind everyone that if you are taking a required minimum distribution, and the ages have changed for when you have to take that over the last couple years, but right now it's 72 and a half. If you're taking a required minimum distribution, then you are eligible to use what's called the qualified charitable distribution. So it means that you can take up to $100,000 of your required minimum distribution or value of your IRA, and you can bypass receiving that income so that it doesn't come directly to you. You don't have to pay tax on it. It can go directly to a charity. If you're 70 and a half, you can still use the qualified charitable distribution, even if you're not taking a required minimum distribution. I know that there's a lot of stuff that I just said, but basically what it means is that if you're 70 and a half, you have the opportunity to bypass having to pay tax and to give a little bit more to the charitable organizations that you want to give to. I always encourage everyone to say, well, if I would have paid 20% on that, I'm going to give 20% more because now I'm not going to have to pay any tax on that. It's really easy to do. You can call your IRA administrator, say, I want to do the QCD, this is the charity I want it to go to, and the church absolutely can receive it, and they do it for you, and you don't have to think about it. So it's a really great tool to stretch a little bit more in giving to the church. And if you give to the church right now, and you have an IRA, and you're 70 and a half, and you're not doing this, you should start doing it because it will save you money and it will help the church. We can go to the next slide. So things to consider. You really just want to use this as a way of thinking about how complicated do I want to get? How much do I want to get involved in having to use an attorney or an accountant? How much control do I want? How much income do I need? So think about, as you're preparing to make gifts, what you want, what you need, and making sure that those things align so that you're not doing something that later that you're going to be uncomfortable with. Understanding what the gift is before you do it and understanding what your needs are. It's always important to know and to feel comfortable with the gift that you're making. We can go to the next. Okay, I just talked a lot, and I will be here. You're not going to get rid of me that quickly. I am available to answer questions. I live in Oakland. I'm happy to take calls or jump on a Zoom. And I know I just threw a lot at you all very quickly. But let's just close with this as a meditation. This is from a song by a writer named Joshua Nelson. From generation to generation, we will tell of your greatness. From generation to generation, we will protect this chain. And from generation to generation, we will praise your name. There is no sacred and profane when we're trying to use our tools and our resources to do God's work. and to be God's people in the world. So I invite you to think about that as you think about what your legacy will be, what your gifts are, and what the gifts are that you have to offer. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Maggie. What a wealth of information. I also would like to thank our finance committee. I know they have been working at providing great information, training, and just making sure that we all can learn how to use our resources in a way that invests in the future of the church, which I think is a fantastic thing. So thank you, finance committee, as well. All right. If you would now please stand and join us in our closing hymn. Bring about reconciliation in fractured relationships. Settle disputes when they come up. Speak the truth and say yes to Jesus. Let your lives witness Christ's love. Let your words bring about reconciliation. Let your thoughts be of peace. Let your touch bring healing. Let your actions count for justice. Be a sign of hope and a beacon of joy. Go, and may God's blessings go with you. Amen.